In the headlines, it's time for the ANC to take a critical look at itself, and the DA has called for cool heads around the issue of the youth wage subsidy. With the news this hour, I'm Ayanda Gunene. Deputy President Kgalema Motlanthe says it's time for the ANC to take a critical look at itself. He was speaking at the Harold Wolpe lecture last night. Motlanthe says the ANC in Parliament must stop relying on its majority of numbers to push through laws, but instead use the art of persuasion to win debates. He is critical of his party, saying it is drifting into a direction that regards the opposition as the enemy. This comes hot on the heels of the protracted debate around the State Information Bill.
Because if it relies on superior numbers in the House, the message that's communicated is that because they don't have the numbers, they will be dealt with in short shrift by the ANC. The ANC will lose its prestige and authority to lead, and the ANC will become ordinary. If it is ordinary, then South Africans will, of course, choose to associate with other parties.
Members of Parliament could face expulsion or a fine if they continue to be absent from parliamentary proceedings without reason. The ANC caucus has lent its support to a draft policy to act against absent MPs. National Assembly Speaker Max Sisulu has on several occasions complained about absenteeism during debates. The SABC senior parliamentary reporter Mercedes Besent has more.
Absenteeism during House debates and in committees can affect the quorum needed either to pass legislation or to even adopt committee reports. ANC Chief Whip Mathole Motshekga says clamping down on absenteeism is long overdue.
And we are saying enough is enough. Now is the time to take action. We therefore supported the draft policy.
He says the ANC welcomes the proposed sanctions,
which, among other things, recommend fines and even expulsion from Parliament.
Motshekga says being an MP is a great responsibility that all political parties should adhere to.
The DA has called for cool heads to prevail in discussions around the issue of the youth wage subsidy. DA Federal and Caucus Chairperson Wilmot James was part of a panel together with COSATU to debate the issue in Cape Town last night. COSATU is opposed to the subsidy, saying it will lead to job losses. James says the subsidy must be seen as a temporary solution to an immediate problem.
What we also need to do is walk out of this room with a clear idea of how we're going to progress on this thing. If there's something wrong with it, well, let's put our heads together and fix it. COSATU is a trade union. It represents its members' interests. Its members are all employed. It has to look after its members' interests, I understand it, but it also has to cut a deal. It has to come to a compromise. It cannot stamp its interests on the interests of the nation, especially if we think the cost of that is you keeping young South Africans out of work.
COSATU in the Western Cape says the R5 billion youth wage subsidy can be used to improve the state of education in township schools. Spokesperson Tony Enrich.
We're not going to support money being given to bosses when that R5 billion could have been used to improve the education facilities in our school, or it could have taken black children who've done well in matric who don't have money and put them into university at 37,000 rand for around 100,000 young people for that R5 billion. That's what the money should be used for if we're saying we want to deal with the problems.
South Africa wants Western nations to lift economic sanctions imposed on Zimbabwe and is pressing Harare's power-sharing government to speed up reforms needed to bring about elections. President Jacob Zuma's policy advisor, Lindiwe Zulu, says Africa as a whole agrees that the sanctions are not working. Zulu is part of a SADC initiative led by Zuma aimed at ending political turmoil in Zimbabwe and holding free and fair elections by next year. Millions of Zimbabweans have flooded South Africa due to Zimbabwe's election violence in 2008, straining South African schools, housing and health services.